Good morning. Good morning, everyone here in the room. Good morning, everyone online. It is 10:30 Central European time. We are saying hello to you from Marseille, from the World Conservation Congress. Welcome to the pavilion of the National Committee of IUCN in the Netherlands. And you are here part of the session Green Entrepreneurship in Conservation Landscapes. It's a session organized by IUCN NL together with WWF Netherlands and Tropenbos International in the context of the program Mobilizing More for Climate. As we all know, tropical landscapes the world over are challenged by multiple crises: climate change, biodiversity loss, disparity between the haves and the have-nots are all serious issues that have to be tackled in the years to come. In particular, important is the engagement of local actors, local communities, and also of particular importance is financing solutions for these problems. So the Mobilizing More for Climate program is a 5-year program that has been financed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. And it's a program that tries to do something about these challenges. And it does so by promoting ecosystem-based approaches for climate change and for biodiversity loss, addressing biodiversity loss. And it is using an integrated landscape approach to find these solutions. And while working with local actors, specifically engaging local actors in those landscape initiatives, a special focus is on how finance can also be more inclusive and how smallholders and local entrepreneurs can benefit from the opportunity that climate finance, biodiversity finance presents to support them in their solutions to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss. As I said, the program is implemented by IUCN Netherlands, Tropenbos International, and WWF Netherlands. It is implemented in 6 landscapes: in Cameroon, in Mozambique, in Uganda, in Ghana, and in Indonesia. We have several of our partners here in the room and others in the Zoom, and we will hear from them. But to tell you a little bit about the approach of this program, in short, there is 3 intervention strategies that this program implements with the local partners in the landscape. First of all, it works on an enabling environment that makes it possible to foster entrepreneurship and private sector engagement. So the enabling environment is very important so that the solutions are linked and make use of existing regulations and policies, or these regulations and policies can be influenced through the program and through the inputs of the various stakeholders in these landscape collaborations. Secondly, the second intervention strategy is all about business case development. And there we see a very important need on the ground for capacity building in engagement with the private sector, engagement with financial institutions, public, private, financial institutions and investors. And that's not something that you do overnight. We all in the conservation world have needed time and a lot of interactions and engagements with the private sector before we understood better how we can involve those sectors in developing solutions. And so the Mobilizing More for Climate program puts a lot of emphasis on capacity building in the landscapes. And a particular component of the program is that we set out calls for local entrepreneurs, for local organizations, for local startups, local companies. These calls challenge these actors to come up with solutions for climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation, ecosystem-based approaches that have the potential to develop into a business case. And the Momo for Climate program provides then training and support, access to networks to make these projects possible. The third intervention strategy is that we bring those most promising projects to the financial sector, and we help and assist in finding investors. Also, we draw lessons from the program and we introduce that to policymakers and also to public and private investors so that they can learn how to provide finance for those landscapes that are the most challenged when it comes to the problems that we see, but that often are the most challenged also to find suitable finance for smallholders, for agroforestry systems. And so that third pillar of the program is very important. So what we are going to do today is that we have a look at research that Tropenbos International did with the Forestries and Agroforestry Initiative. And they analyzed 3 cases in 3 landscapes in the Momo for Climate program. And they analyzed emerging models for smallholder finance and for local business cases for SMEs and for programs where smallholders take center stage. This research was conducted in Uganda, in the Albertine Rift Valley. And we have Pauline Nantongo here, who works in that landscape. She's the director of EcoTrust. So she's here with us to discuss the outcomes of those studies. The second landscape where the study was conducted was in Ghana, in the cocoa landscape, where Tropenbos Ghana is working, and Evans is with us from that program, and he is one of the participants online. And then we have Dia Mawesti from West Kalimantan in Indonesia, and that was the third landscape where this study was conducted. And of course, we have someone also who was involved from Tropenbos in these studies, and that's Luis, who is here with us, and he will give us some details about these emerging financial models in these landscapes where the Momo for Climate program is being implemented. So we are now going to first listen to Luis with his presentation of the studies. That will be followed by a brief discussion with the partners that are involved in those landscapes and that have been working on these business cases and these collaborations with entrepreneurs. And after that, we have a session where we discuss the relevance of the outcomes of these studies and what are the main lessons for the program and what are the main lessons for the broader multi-stakeholder collaboration in these landscapes. And that discussion will be with the complete group of implementing partners in mobilizing more for climate in all the 6 landscapes. And for that session, Roberti Esama is going to join us from Cameroon. You can actually already see him on the screen. And Bernabe Fondo from Mozambique is also going to join us. And so then we will have all the 6 partners from Mobilizing More for Climate together. Please bear with us. This is the first session in this pavilion. So we hope that the technology works and I can see everyone at the moment, online and in person. So I hope everyone as well. There will also be an opportunity for online and in-person participants to pose questions. and that will be after the second part of this program. So you can send your questions in the YouTube channel if you are participating online. And of course, here, whoever is here with us, I see that we have a full house. You can take the microphone and ask your questions. That's in the second part of this event. And after that, we have a small recap with those that are here, with Pauline, Daryl, and Luis, to see what we learned from this session, from the discussion, and how we're going to take that on board in the rest of the implementation of this program. Because we are just in the second year of Momo for Climate. As you can imagine, this program has been challenged because of the current pandemic in which we are still in the middle of. And you can see that also here we are dealing with the physical limitations of that. Anyway, there's one short request to those that are here in person, and that is to, if you want, leave your contact information by scanning the QR code that you see at the back of your chair. And when you do that, you will also receive a recording of this session in your email box. So thanks a lot. Very exciting to kick off this session. And Luis, the floor is yours.
Is that okay? Can everyone hear me? Okay. Well, hello, everyone. So today, what we want to talk about is about smallholders and what conditions should be in place so they can truly become green entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. So as my colleague Jan Willem already mentioned, Momo4C stands for Mobilizing More for Climate. What we want to do is to mobilize resources towards climate solutions. And we want to do that focusing on business propositions that can address the challenges in terms of adaptation and mitigation of the effects of climate change. And we want to focus on building capacities on the ground so the local communities can not only be involved, but be truly entrepreneurs and drive resilience in their own landscapes. Next slide, please. So we focus in the landscape approach, where different stakeholders have common objectives and work towards the same goals. And despite increasing potential, there are still some barriers towards the upscaling of these kind of initiatives. And some of these barriers, can you, thank you. And some of these barriers are connected to finance, because for these landscapes to really become sustainable on the long-term investment commitment is needed. Also, sometimes finance is not the main barrier, but next, please. Yeah, but the orientation of those investments do not follow the landscape goals previously defined by the different stakeholders. And last but not least, and maybe one of the main barriers, is that financial mechanisms that are normally deployed in these landscapes are not equally, do not equally access to the different landscape actors. And let's talk about smallholders. So smallholders are the basis of most of these 6 landscapes that we work in. They are the ones who produce food locally, and they are the ones that live there and will live there for the further generations. Also, they are the ones that are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And thus, we believe they should take a central role driving sustainability in their landscapes. Despite this increasing potential, they remain marginalized and struggle to be involved in the financial value chains. And this is due to several barriers and risks they experience every day. They are seen as risky business for investors. They do not have access to technology or other resources. Maybe they live in areas where formal financial institutions are not present, and they lack capacities to manage risk and to ensure the sustainability of their practices. Next slide. But we know that there are certain initiatives out there that have proven successful, involving smallholders and sustainable value chains. So we wanted to know more about those. So in the light of Momo and in collaboration with the research program Forestries and Agroforestry, we developed jointly a methodology to assess those mechanisms, what risk mitigation strategies they were deploying to tackle these barriers and risks that smallholders are experiencing every day. And we wanted to take lessons from that, so then we can apply in our own program, Momo for C. Next slide. So this is a small diagram on our methodological steps. I don't want to get into details. It's just to show you the outlook. Normally, we started by interviews on implementing agency. There is normally a civil society organization or a company that serves as a link between funding sources and recipients. And then we followed with interviews on both sources and recipients, and we ended up with focus group discussions to validate results. Next slide. And we've done this in several areas in the world, and we are lucky enough to have today and to be able to discuss 3 of these cases, one in Indonesia, one in Uganda, and one in Ghana. Slide. So the first case we can discuss is the credit union in Indonesia, in West Kalimantan. So it's an area where there's lack of financial institutions, and thus the local smallholders didn't have access to finance. So credit union showed up. It is a financial institution that is created by the members it is supposed to serve. And the added value towards formal financial institutions is that it provides a set of financial instruments that are locally adapted, that are adapted to the local context. And there are several cases in which there's productive loans, there's green loans, there's emergency funds, and those are normally products that are not available in a bank or in a formal financial institution. Also, they have some key specifications in their model, because when you have increasing access to finance, you not only get finance, but you also get a package that comes with technical assistance, with training in financial literacy, training in agricultural practices, and also access to markets and off-takers of their products. So if you travel to Uganda, where EcoTrust, the Environmental Conservation Trust of Uganda, is implementing a program called Trees for Global Benefit, you see a different mechanism in a different context, but also within the same lines of thought. They combine a carbon offsetting mechanism with livelihood improvements for the different stakeholders. What they do, they can do this by blending finance from different sources, from private sector, from grants, public finance, from their own internal revenue, and from community contributions. And they do this by deploying a 3-phase investment mechanism. The first part, they recruit different smallholder farmers that are willing to restore part of their farm and increase the number of trees. Once the first investment phase is done and the farmers are trained and linked to a business plan of 25 years, the second phase starts, in which they aggregate the different farms, the different smallholder farmers, and they certificate to be able to get certified carbon credits. And these 2 first phases, they are financed by grants and by community contributions and internal revenue. Once you get in the 3rd phase, you get to harness private capital. So they sell carbon credits to the private investors, to private companies, most of them in the Netherlands, and they can provide ex-ante payments for farmers. So farmers get to improve their yields due to co-benefits, sustainable co-benefits from improving the forest and the soil in their farms, but at the same time get an income diversification through carbon, through their food crops, and through the training they receive. So if we get to Tuton in Ghana, so it's another landscape. Tuton is a chocolate company. The chocolate company that actually implemented a support system for its cocoa providers. They wanted to make their cocoa value chain more sustainable. So what they did is to provide training, coaching, and banking. They call it the three models. It is part of their overarching mechanism. In the coaching model, what they do is to work along farmers. Sorry, is to work along farmers and coach them in business planning. They make a joint business plan for their farms and in order to upscale their production. In the second model, there's the training model, in which they focus on agricultural expertise. So in which the farmers learn how to increase yields, how to ensure the sustainability of their practices, and thus are able to get premium price for their cocoa beans. And in the banking model is where they try to promote the formation of VSLAs, the Village Savings and Loan Association. And these are associations that are created by the different smallholder farmers, and it gives them better access to finance, to loans and to emergency funds in case something happens. So within these three models, they can improve the entrepreneurial capacities of farmers. They enable them to get premium prices for their cocoa beans, and they have a guarantee that they can sell their produce at a better price in the end of the harvesting cycle. So if we look at these three models, we see that there's three different contexts, three different landscapes, three different countries, and three different mechanisms. But there are some commonalities we can see here. Finance by itself is not a solution. If we don't link finance to improving capacities on the ground and linking to better off-takers of their products, finance will not turn smallholders into green entrepreneurs. But in order to do that, and drawing from these three cases, if we deliver a package in which finance is linked to expertise, to capacity building, and better access to off-takers of their products, we can really give the conditions for smallholder farmers to become green entrepreneurs and drive sustainability in their own landscape. And I always like to finish with the what framework. The so what can we take from this? And the know what opportunities can we actually see in our landscapes in Momo4C, where we can apply this knowledge that we have created. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luis. Pauline, can I start with you? Because it sounds very impressive. You use public finance to leverage private finance. You work with smallholders that do restoration of tropical forest tree species on their land, and you make it work. You have a business model. Now, how do you manage to integrate this approach, this model, and link it to what Luis talked about, off-taking companies in the, say, regular production world, companies that operate in your landscape? How does this link work? And how important is that to make this a case that can be replicated and scaled up?
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me on this panel. And good morning, everybody. The main approach that EcoTrust uses is to look at landscape restoration as a business with a long-term investment horizon. And because it has a long-term horizon, it is perceived to be risky. So some of the risk is real, but some of the risk is just perception. So having understood that, and understood that at the different stages of this investment horizon, there is a funding source that is appropriate for each stage. So what we do is we use our own revenue as EcoTrust, and we use the farmers' resources to develop a business case for a public funder. because a public funder is risk averse, but is not as risk averse as a private sector. So when you work with the farmers, they demonstrate that they can actually manage land in a sustainable manner, then a public funder can actually give you money to grow that business case. So then when we use public financing, we deploy it in a manner that will build a business case for the private sector. But then we build the business case for the private sector on the basis of payment for environmental services, carbon offsets, watershed services, and whatever else that is in that landscape. Then so while we are using public financing, we are using it to develop models, to invest in scientific research, to technically specify the activities that the farmers are doing so that we can quantify the environmental services and commoditize them. So then when we sell the environmental services, then we also give them to the farmer in a manner that creates a credit history for the farmer and also creates assets that can be used as collateral so that the farmer now can access loan financing. Then they also use their subsequent performance-based payments to offset the loans. So in that way, a farmer creates a new livelihood strategy that is dependent on this new sustainable land use. And then the story goes on and on and on. So each part of the investment stage links into the other and links into the other, and the cycle goes on and on. So that's how we do it.
Thank you, Pauline. We'll probably have some more opportunity to dig more into this model and what you learned from the research. I would like to now move to West Kalimantan, Dia, where we have you in the room. I don't see you yet. Hi, Dia. Welcome. Great to see you. My question to you is, what did you learn from the study that was done? What did you learn about the barriers that the credit union might have to provide loans to smallholder farmers? And secondly, did you learn something new about what motivates smallholders to be part of this, or what might maybe limit them to participate?
Thank you, Ian Willem. Thank you for having me in this panel. So what I learned from credit union case is that when there are local level financial institution, it really opened up many opportunity for local communities, especially those coming from smallholders or agroforestry farmers who are really have a lack access to what so-called formal financial institution or excluded from traditional banking mechanism due to the distance of, because they are mostly in our sub-landscape. It is quite a remote area with no non-existence of banking offices in that area. So when credit union come and they brought up this financial access or access to finance some sort of local businesses and MSMEs that really answer or that really overcome the barriers that was existing for the smallholder farmers. And the second one, when they we learned that they have this kind of innovative mechanism where they provide a loan to a very small scale and a newly started business, especially in agricultural sectors. And it really opened up opportunity to strengthen those businesses in agriculture sectors that are not have very good access on finance so far. So those kind of innovative financing mechanism that is provided by credit union that we studied have opened up opportunity for farmers, especially those who started their businesses, to have those access to finance. And then also that credit union has provided not only the loan itself, but also the the technical assistance for those farmers, not only in the production cycle, but they are, even though it's still a piloting, they already trying to provide assistance to widen the market outreach of the farming products. So I think those initiatives can really support and really help local farmers to overcome the barriers to access the finance. And what motivates local communities to be part of Western Union, aside from what I said earlier, is that there is some, because the form is a cooperative, so it really like a strength and like social cohesion, social solidarity among local communities to be part of the credit union itself. I think that's my question, Ian Willem, and my answer.
Thanks a lot, Dia. Very interesting. We should remember that we are talking about landscapes where there's no regular certified commodity production. These are really the landscapes where deforestation is still going on, and we have smallholders that depend on multiple products from agroforestry systems. And as we can see from these two examples, it's really, you need a tailor-made product and approach that fits that particular situation. Now, for the third study, I would like to ask Evans to tell us a little bit more, because that is a different landscape. There's also still a lot of deforestation and degradation in that landscape, but there is cocoa production, which we all know is a huge commodity with a lot of initiatives and certification programs, etc. So Evans, you are working with trader company Tuton. So can you tell us a little bit about the three models that I believe Tuton is applying or has developed in your landscape? And can you also say something about how does working with a trader like that fit in the landscape approach?
Okay. Good morning to everyone, and then thank you very much, Jan. Greetings from Ghana. Tuton is a cocoa buying company which works with smallholder farmers in the northwestern part of Ghana. And these farmers have difficulties in meeting international sustainability standards and also getting access to finance. So in effort to meet an increasing global demand for cocoa from sustainable source, Tuton as a company has endeavored to provide support systems that will help reduce economic and then technical barriers, as well as provide incentives for sustainable cocoa production. So these economic barriers include access to markets and then access to finance. And then the technical barrier also relation of modern technology. So Tuton consider both type of barriers as a need which should be resolved in order to achieve sustainable production value chains. So they are working with different models to drive this sustainability measures and then making sure that there is financial inclusion covering smallholder farmers in the west-north part of Ghana. They are using different models. One of the model is the training, professionalism, and then the coaching, access to input, cocoa rehabilitation, intensification and productivity, village loans and savings schemes, additional livelihood, and then landscape governance. But the landscape governance is driving the integrated approach, where the landscape governance aspect serves as the overarching model driving the integrated landscape approach, like I mentioned. So there are a number of CSOs and other relevant stakeholders under one objective for the landscape, and then resources or investments are committed to achieve impact at scale. So Tuton see three of the models as very relevant. That is supporting them to promote sustainable supply chains, and then making sure that there is improvement in the standard of cocoa production in terms of reducing deforestation, and then making sure that investments are made into cocoa production. There is enhancement in living conditions for cocoa farmers, and then overall there is resilience in the landscape. So the training and the professionalism model gives capacity to the farmers to be able to meet some climate smart cocoa standards within the landscape. The coaching model also supports farmers to see their cocoa farming as an enterprise, as a business case they will need to practice. And then it gives them the perspective to be able to divert into other green business opportunities. And the banking and supporting model also support farmers to do savings, where Tuton is connected to a savings and loan group, and they have established a rural support service center where farmers can save with these banks and then get access to input on credits. And there's also the bit of the savings and loan associations where farmers can also mobilize resources to invest into their cocoa farms. So all these three models work together to deliver sustainability, financial inclusion, and investment into these smallholder farmers, and then overall making the landscape climate resilient in the face of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evans. Very interesting. We've now heard some details about these three cases. We will hear also about two other landscapes. But in the meantime, I would like to briefly open the floor to the audience. If you have any questions, especially maybe clarifying questions or any other questions. I also am looking at what has come out of the YouTube channel. Luis, have you seen any questions so far? Okay, any questions from the, yes, you can take the microphone over there.
Hi, my name is Benoit Camon. I'm here on behalf of Reforestry. I was curious to know, when you're financing these smallholder farmers, is this being done on an individual basis, or is there an approach to aggregate and bring together entire villages? What is your approach as far as financing on the implementation side look like?
Is there a particular person you would like to ask this to, or?
I suppose this would probably be EcoTrust. It sounds like EcoTrust is the one doing the financing to the smallholder farmers. So yeah, is this like on a one-to-one basis, or is there cooperatives or associations that are formed? And how is that done?
Yeah, very important question.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for that question, because that question points directly to a certain type of risk, which is scale. And yes, we do aggregate. We do aggregate, but then we also make individual agreements. So the aggregation platform is such that it's designed to accommodate diversity. So that because smallholders are very diverse, so the aggregation platform is created to accommodate diversity such that every smallholder can have an option that is appropriate to them. And then you aggregate different types of businesses and different types of suitable financing sources. But yes, we do aggregate.
Thanks. Any other question? If not, then I would like to give the floor to Daryl, because your landscape, the Shia northern savanna landscape in Ghana is also a very interesting and rich landscape. When you listen to the experiences and lessons generated from the other landscapes, what does that tell you? Do you recognize models and challenges and opportunities, or how can you make use of that in your own landscape? And of course, you can tell us a little bit about your approach and with whom you work in the northern savanna in Ghana.
Thank you very much, young Willem, and also good morning to everyone. We come from a landscape which is semi-arid, very dry, and where activities of local people, the smallholders, as we know, are mostly farmers, and also they are also harvesting other wild products, and some of them include shea, which is now becoming growing, increasingly becoming a commodity in the cosmetic sector. And so there's interest in the landscape as to how best to help farmers, and also particularly women, assess effectively the share in the landscape, the resources that they can get, and also the incomes associated with it. And I have to say that we started from a situation where we even didn't have an idea where to go until we also got to experience some of the ideas that EcoTrust has been sharing here, because if you look at it in terms of addressing risks for companies, first, like was said, and also from your question, the question we had, companies need scale. When they come to the landscape, needing to have people who are already aware of the situation and are able to engage with them. So in the landscape, we had people or committee of farmers who didn't even know where to start from, how to engage the companies. There were individual buyers coming to them, giving them low prices, and it wasn't so organized. So before you could assess big markets, get good prices, and also ensure that you are also sustainable, you needed to, first of all, build your capacity and also organize yourself. So one of the key things we learned from the landscape was also how to organize these women. And as was said, there were individual agreements, and then we aggregated all of that into groups and associations. We also took a lot of lessons from forming some of these credit unions. I mean, I remember there was a time Pauline had to come to Ghana to help us even do an assessment of how this can work. And I have to say that we've also taken advantage of the credit union, the VSLA. So in the Molo landscape where we work, we have VSLAs we work with. We also now have several groups that are also benefiting from the trainings that they also get to be able to ensure that they can effectively engage with businesses. And I can say that since we started aggregating these farmers into groups, we have companies that are now actively engaging with the women's group. We have Savannah Food Company. And as a result of that, the company also needed to saw the opportunity and said, let's look at how we can even add more value. And one of the key things they do was how to even set up processing facilities. And that in itself also triggered several other investment partners coming into the landscape. I can tell you now that there was a processing facility that was established right now for organic share processing. And if I can count not less than 8 private companies that join hands to help the women set this up and also ensure that everything that is produced is by the women, and a lot of the income is also now going to the women. So I believe that if we help the companies address the issues of risks, it opens the floodgate for more businesses to come in. And it's not only benefiting the landscape for share. We've also started an engagement where we have seen organic cassava flour production. We are now looking at using the same model to address unsustainable charcoal production, which is also leading to significant deforestation in the area. And it's also along this same model that we are applying. And I believe that in no time, we are going to see also significant restoration potential and investment coming for landscape restoration and also addressing sustainable charcoal issues that are much needed in this land. So I believe that this approach of capacity building, helping companies to address risks, works, and it also brings a lot of benefit to the smallholder farmers if we really work diligently at it.
Thank you, Daryl. I would like now to turn to Cameroon. Roberti, are you there? And my question to you would be, looking from a distance at the tri-national landscape, I've been also in the area myself. It's an area where the traditional local indigenous communities and local communities and their aspirations to conserve biodiversity and retain their traditional lifestyles. As an outsider, it seems far removed from the idea that we sometimes have that they might want to be involved in commodity production, sustainable or otherwise. So in your landscape, how do you see that dynamic? And what do you learn from the examples that we have just heard in the particular case of your landscape? Okay, Roberti, are you there? If not, then we should move to, no. We should move to Bernabe. So similar to my question, how do you engage local communities, indigenous groups, such as women and youth, indigenous people in the program? And what do you learn from the fact that mobilizing more for climate is a collaboration between different landscapes in different countries with very different settings, but that also tries to promote cross landscape learning?
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for the chance of being here, participating in this conference. Well, first of all, let me describe a bit what is Zambezi and try to make connection with the learning cases that we had here. One of the particularities of the Zambezi is that local communities are normally excluded from the traditional, let's say, commercial banks. They do not have capacity to access to loans and other facilities. The other important characteristics of the Zambezi is that it's a landscape where local communities are highly dependent on the natural resources. And this led to unsustainable use and so on and so forth. And lastly, the lack of technical capacity of some actors, mainly the local communities, for engaging on business developments for better and sustainable management of the natural resources. Then, and we are implementing the MOMO4C in the landscape approach, meaning that we are able to bring different actors, different stakeholders to be parts of the actions on for looking for solutions. We together, all the stakeholders together have capacity and possibility of sitting and trying to find solutions for addressing their challenges. The Tuton case, the Tuton model that has been presented here, which tries to improve, or to identify and then to improve practices to enable local communities for making savings, gathering themselves associations, and so on. It is the model that would fit into the Zambezi Delta's case. Of course, we can bring other experiences from other models, which are associated with the main characteristics of the Zambezi, but this model seems to be the most suitable. How are we engaging them? How are we trying to mobilize the marginalized groups? I mean, local communities, women, youth, and so on, through learning sessions. First of all, from identification of their challenges, and then through learning sessions, bringing examples from other projects that are being developed, and also trying to encourage them to develop business cases that addresses most of their issues, is how we are involving them on the Momo4C project in the Zambezi Delta. This is my intervention for your questions, but I'm still here, open to talk more if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernabe. So far we've looked mostly on models where the program interacts with public, private investors, and how that can be better linked to smallholders that have to be aggregated in cooperatives, in landscape groups. Maybe Pauline, you can later say something about it. But Bernabe, maybe you can also say something about another aspect of mobilizing more for climate, and that is how the program is trying to look for entrepreneurs from the local community, but also any other people with an idea or with a startup or companies that are active in the landscape and that have a very particular solution for climate adaptation, mitigation, biodiversity conservation challenges. Can you tell us something about how we go about in finding those amazing persons that are always there in the landscape, but that we often fail to find, especially as NGOs? So can you say something about how we go about that and where you now stand in that process?
Yeah, well, thank you again. For this process of identification of potential entrepreneurship within the landscape, what we are currently doing is to conduct an assessment to identify potential bankable projects that can be developed by different actors, and that can be also supported by them. And on the other hand, we are embarking on Momo4C calls process, where we encourage different actors to present their proposals in terms of projects that they can develop or they are currently developing and needs to be strengthened. What we will do under this process is that we will select from the advisory reports and also from the applications that we are collecting now, we will evaluate and select some of the promising projects or potential projects, and we will provide the technical assistance under Momo4C. We will support them on developing of better business cases, and lastly, we will connect those that will be selected finally after the technical assistance. We will connect them to potential investors, funders, and so on. And that will enable to pilot some projects and to showcase on what we have found in the landscape, and also will help to attract whether more proponents, but also will help to attract potential investors for the landscape. This is how we see, and this is how we are approaching to the business case developers. Thank you.
Thank you. So they're like competitions that you set out, and you have a panel of financial experts that give advice on which ones to identify, which ones to choose for further capacity building in business case development.
Yes, yes.
So Dia, are you still there? And could you maybe say something about how you are shaping this part of the program, this search for entrepreneurs in your landscape in West Kalimantan?
Yeah, when we are talking about business in our landscape in West Kalimantan, which is what we are supporting is agroforestry, business in agroforestry sectors that really have impact in climate change mitigation and adaptation. We have to have it in the back of our mind that the business as a business per se is maybe non-existent yet, because when farmers, smallholder farmers, are cultivating their land, etc., they are mostly currently are doing it for like a subsistent manner. Not many of them are really having those as a business. So what we are doing is that we really facilitate them to oversee all those business opportunities and help them to improve what so-called traditionally managed business into something that is more well managed, and then can be appealing to the investors, or can be appealing to financial institutions. So we are facilitating them to really see their business, especially in agroforestry. What are the opportunity of the products? What are the opportunity of the market, and where what kind of needs they might need in terms of financial support, etc. And that we hope can be able to really improve their capacity in terms of utilizing this model or this business to support their livelihoods, to have better income in one side, and the other side to really preserve what the good practices of the conservation of the nature and forest, etc. So we want to really combine these two approach in that sense. That's my answer.
Thank you, Dia. Pauline, when I listen to this work, for example, in West Kalimantan about working with smallholders to support them in becoming a business, developing a business model collectively or in alignment with a company. It reminds me to what you always say is that you see in Uganda, you see the smallholder as the smallest business unit. So can you tell us something with the relevance to the other landscape, how that works, and how do you think that through these calls for entrepreneurs, you are indeed also finding entrepreneurship amongst the smallholders and not just startups maybe in the capital city?
Thank you very much. Yes, we do. When we are engaging with the communities, we look at every household as an economic unit, because we have understood that it is the ability for this land use to make economic sense to the owner that will sustain that land use. If you can give as much donations, as much help, but if that specific landscape, whatever the products, the land use, whatever products that come out of it and whatever incomes that come into the community, into the household, if it does not form a significant part of the household's livelihood, they will switch to another land use. So the way we have organized the Momo calls, it's within the concept of value proposition that we approach, that we work with these economic units and the market. So we have understood that we have mobilized a set of producers in the households. And then we also know that there are entrepreneurs, large entrepreneurs, market actors within the landscape, some of them even outside the landscape. But within the concept of value proposition, those market actors have a need. And that need is on the aggregation side. So we have organized the calls whereby the households themselves, in their aggregations, they can compete, but also the market actors themselves, they can also compete. So we have developed different lots that will allow for competition within those. Either you're bringing an intervention to the table, but also we are providing you an aggregation platform, or you are a farmer or farmer groups that are looking to have access to the market. So we have organized the call in such that this set has a solution they are providing for the other set, but they also have a need from the other set. So we hope to find solutions from either end that meet the needs of the other actors. And in the end, it will be a partnership, a long-term partnership that will come out of the contest.
And how would an investor invest in a partnership?
We have left it open. There is a possibility to invest in the partnership. And so the partnership will work out depending on what comes out on both sides. But we have identified at least 3 different value chains that can come, that have potential for options for investors to invest in those partnerships, aggregation and offsetting partnerships. Sorry, off-taking partnerships.
Okay, thanks. I'm now looking at the audience, also at the online audience. Please do send your questions in the YouTube chat. In particular, I would also be, please take the microphone here. I would also be particularly interested in investors and people from the financial sector, private sector that are in the online or the room here to ask their questions. But please introduce you and the institution that you represent. Thanks.
Good morning. Many thanks. I'm Lena Fouché. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Exeter. Can you hear me fine?
I think the microphone is not on.
Can you hear me now? Okay, yeah. Hi, many thanks. So I'm Lena Fouché. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Exeter, and I'm studying indigenous entrepreneurship. So I was actually interested in the title of the session about green entrepreneurship and what is meant by that. And I hear a lot about those very exciting projects that look like win-win solutions. But then I hear a lot about the financial aspect of those projects, right? And they have to be financially sustainable. And especially when you have to deal with big companies that we know have to prioritize the economic dimension of this. So I'm wondering how you ensure that actually it's also socially sustainable. As you said, it has to be related to the lifestyle of the people already, and also environmentally sustainable. Many thanks.
Thank you very much for that question. We almost would forget that we are conservation organizations. So Daryl, I see you nodding. I think you can reflect on this.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I think your question is very relevant to the landscape, because when Louis was making a presentation one of the key things we focus on is how does the investment become relevant to the landscape challenge? So if your landscape challenge is deforestation, how is that investment targeting enterprises or business cases that will really address that deforestation? In the case of the Mole landscape, our biggest challenge at the moment has been unsustainable charcoal production. So when we also did the business calls, we are also implementing the Momo for C calls. One of the key focus of the call was how does a business proposition help to address the unsustainable charcoal production? And this is the focus. And although over 36 proposals that we received, all of them are very directed and targeted at ideas that are going to help us to address the unsustainable charcoal production and offer other sustainable access to energy. And so we've seen proposals that are also looking at biogas production, renewable biogas, and all of that. And this is really key because it's not only about just the economic interest, but I think for Momo for C, the focus is how does that financial investment help to address a landscape challenge? And so it is really crucial. It is not left out. Maybe for the landscape, what has been very crucial for most of the time has been even the finance coming in. Because if you know, a lot of the finance are coming for climate adaptation, all of that, just about for every $100, according to research, just about 10% go to the landscape. So there's definitely a good reason to push for the finance. But of course, that finance coming in is then going to be directed towards addressing the landscape change. And that is exactly what we have been also focusing on.
Thanks. Is there someone online who would like to respond to this question? Is Roberti still in the room or no? No, he's not here. Okay. Please.
Yeah, just to add to a bit of what Pauline explained, in the case of EcoTrust, within the landscape that we operate is called the Murchison landscape. We have the main problem there is degradation of forest reserves. So we've been working previously with those smallholders, the ones we call the smallholder entrepreneurs, in terms of restoration of the area and conserving the big forest reserves. So already we had a conservation concept where the small forests around the big one, which are being managed by communities, the smallholders. So we figured that if we're able to support the smallholders to sustain these buffer forests, they will then not attack the main big forests. So the conservation concept there of buffering the big forest, we call it community land associations. So there's a conservation concept that helps protect community forests so that the communities then don't degrade the main forest reserve. So having formulated that concept, we have 10 big communities that are looking after community forests to buffer the main one. But then they had a challenge. How do they sustain their forests so that they don't go to the other one? So then we worked with them to develop business plans for sustaining their own community forests so that they don't have to go to the big forest. But to sustain a forest without benefiting from it, even that is detrimental. So the other issue was, how can they sustain their community forests, but also benefit from them? So having developed a sustainability plan, we also had to develop a business plan. So we have therefore had 10 big communities with a forest management plan and then a business plan. So the opportunity for Momo calls gave us a chance to now do a third thing with these communities. They have a forest management plan, they have a business plan, but now they need to implement both of them so that they benefit. So for us, the Momo calls as Pauline already explained, gave us a chance now. How do we support this already conservation concept that is conserving a forest and benefiting the smallholders? How then do we support them to grow this into a business case that is big enough to help them sustain both the forest, their livelihoods, and the landscape? So the call is aimed at growing those 10 business cases in 3 different ways, either as individual community associations, or as combined community associations, or a big off-taker coming and working with all of them to design a business case that works with all of them, but aimed at conserving their community forests so that they remain as buffers, but also sustaining their livelihoods and then sustaining the landscape. So the lots that Pauline explained are aimed at like a triple win: create, sustain the conservation objective, create sustainable livelihoods, and then overall deal with climate change across the landscape. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Freddie. Is this still working? Yeah. Luis, are there any questions from the YouTube channel?
Well, not from the YouTube channel, but Robert D. His internet connection is unstable, but he throws a question into discussion. So from the landscape, it appears that smallholders and local communities understand the importance of preserving biodiversity and protecting ecosystems for sustainable well-being. But how can we close the gap between smallholders as sustainable commodity producers to a green commodity entrepreneur who is able to build strong partnerships with investors and other stakeholders?
Yes, thank you very much. I think this has also been the concern. The fact that when there is investment, for example, in our landscape, anytime there has been an opportunity for investment, you see big companies coming in, bringing the initiative, sometimes leaving out the potential for smallholders to get involved. And this is where we believe that the whole nature and dynamics of Momo4C is really useful, because it is identifying, creating a platform for local businesses or local entrepreneurs to rise up by creating an opportunity for a call that is directed at the landscape for local people for them to apply. So in this case, we are prioritizing the interests of the smallholder groups over the interests of the big investors who come in. We are not saying that the big investors are not needed. They are needed, but at this point, we need the learning and the capacity to transition to green enterprises to come from the local people themselves. That is very, very crucial. And then they can even effectively also form alliances and partnerships with the big investors who come in, because this is also one of the key risks that the big businesses want. They want to come into a landscape where the people understand that green business is important, it is good for their business, and to be able to partner, there needs to be some level of capacity on the part of local actors in that area. And so for us, we see a big strength in the Momo4C, where we create a call that is open to local people, that also address local relevant issues. And so it's actually highlight the need to prioritize smallholders over the big investors. And this is something that we see is really key, and we also need to sustain and develop. Yeah.
Can I? Yes, I in addition to what Darrow has just said, one of the things that we have not mentioned in this room that is critical in all the case studies is the concept of an honest broker. So EcoTrust, Russia, and the colleagues in Indonesia and Mozambique, we are all civil society organizations that are not partners in the business. So we stand in that gap to be the honest brokers. And what the Momo calls have done is to give us the framework within which to conduct this brokerage. So to be able to, because whichever way you look at it, the private sector speaks Greek while the smallholders speak Luganda. I mean, they cannot communicate. They cannot. So normally what happens is that the private sector, because he's a strong negotiator, he will cause the smallholders to adapt. Yet it doesn't necessarily mean that his methods are the best. So what we do as honest brokers is to understand the needs of the private sector, but also enable the private sector to understand that the smallholder, the way they are conducting business, there's a lot of value in it. So when we say we technically specify, we get those actions of the smallholder, write them in a language that the private sector can understand. So that role of an honest broker is very critical in making those two parties come to a mutually beneficial agreement.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I just wanted to add that I see the role of civil society in being the honest broker, but not only the honest broker, but someone that provides also capacity building. Because I think capacity building is key from getting into a commodity producer to a green entrepreneur. A real entrepreneur has to be able to engage with different stakeholders, has to be able to connect to markets and sell their products at the best price. And only with, also, of course, access to finance, but with capacity building, they will be able to do that. And then actually, we have 3 cases here in which we link finance, capacity, and access to markets. And those are the 3 ingredients in which we can really turn a smallholder into a green entrepreneur driving sustainability in their landscapes. And that's the role that civil society has now. And I think the goal is on the long term is always to become redundant. So that we are no longer needed to be there, so that the smallholders have the capacity to do that for themselves, and to a real entrepreneur has that capacity. So then on the long term, we see, I see the role of the civil society organizations to become redundant and to finally drop off the landscapes and leave the landscape in the hands of the local communities that are capable to drive these solutions for the future of their landscape, of their families, and driving their businesses as a real entrepreneur.
Thanks for that, Luis. Very clear. I see another question. And let me just see, are there any other questions, online or offline? Okay, we will take these 2 questions. You also have, there's one, okay. So let's take these 3 questions and then we'll have a quick recap.
Yeah, thank you. Following up on that and on the role of the honest broker, how do you ensure that the benefits are equally shared between the smallholders and those investors so that there is no capture? And I was also wondering, and I think you touched on it, are there some communities you're working with that just do not want to engage into market and that are very happy with their subsistence system? Because I mean, traditional entrepreneurship has been known to be to have social and environmental values. So can we also support those communities that do not want to integrate into those markets? And yeah.
I just want to see if Dia or Evans, do you have a perspective on this particular question?
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
Dia?
So, Evans,
yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So on her second question, communities, smallholder farmers on themselves do not produce for themselves. They are part of a bigger market and then a bigger picture. So there are standards, sustainability standards, they always need to adhere to. And some of them are coming from the demand side. So smallholder farmers in communities would always need to align their production to some of this international demand for sustainability. And that is where it is important for smallholder communities to take advantage of programs and interventions that seeks to make their enterprises and businesses climate resilient, and then addressing some of these deforestation issues coming up. So in effect, smallholder farmers would always need to align to this requirement and then seek technology and then capacity building. Thank you.
Thanks. Dia, you also wanted to say something? Please.
In our case in West Kalimantan, actually, there are some smallholders that do have certain crops that they just plant it as a home garden. I mean, they have the main crops for sale, like in this case, it's rubber, but they also have potential of other crops that they don't really do it as for business, but rather for subsistence. But what we are trying to do is we want to develop a case where they can intercropping their crops to make an agroforestry system that might be the added that might be the added value for their like a rubber production, but they can also produce other crops that can add their income, improve their income, and also to really preserve the area as a mixed garden that is also benefited from the environmental point of view. So that's what we are trying to do. We are, because there are potential of economic benefits of some crop that are no longer being like capitalized, or they don't grow it for sale, but they'll do it once and then no longer do it because of the decrease of the price or other reasons. But the potential is there, and we want to really like facilitate them to really see, is this can be a good business potential? Can this crop can also like improve their income, etc. So that's what we are doing with this project.
Thank you, Dia. Maybe quickly mention the question in the chat.
So the question in the chat is from Joseph Asante. How are these proposed businesses linked other interventions targeting same or similar environmental or climate challenges? So how are those proposed businesses linked with other interventions that are targeting the same or similar environmental or climate challenges?
Thank you. My name is Koenraad Kersch. I'm the Director of ICT Netherlands. First of all, isn't it amazing how we can interact across time zones and country here in this discussing this? I'm amazed. Wonderful. My question was on the issue of the purpose of becoming redundant in the landscape. It triggered me. I understand the point. At the same time, isn't it a crucial role which always needs to be there to have organized civil society, to be a broker between interests and to voice out? And although I understand the point very well that the ultimate goal is that the problems will be solved and that things will go better, will there still ever be a role of organized civil society in this particular topic just because of the different interests?
All microphones are functional, by the way. We don't need only one.
I think this is a very nice concluding question. And Pauline, I see you nodding a lot. So maybe you can give a final reflection of 4 minutes about this aspect of how other environmental challenges are aligned with this approach to the landscape approach, and this whole question about the role of civil society that will probably always be playing an important role. So the final words, Pauline, are to you. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, it's an honor to be able to have the final say. And even as he mentioned it, so many things came through my mind. I was like, you need to understand that we are part of this landscape. We are not, you said Netherlands or WWF or whatever it is that came from somewhere and embedded themselves in this landscape. We are landholders in these landscapes. We have our homes and everything in these landscapes. So we are not going anywhere. It's just that because we have been privileged to understand the language of the market, we have a responsibility to make sure that that language and activities of the market do not deprive our other stakeholders that we live with, do not deprive them of the access to any of these opportunities. So we are there and we are going nowhere. The thing is that because it's a very diverse environment, very diverse opportunities, very diverse challenges, we will evolve. When we solve one set of challenges, we will move to the next challenge. Because there's, you know, the hierarchy of needs. One, you solve one need, it gets you into the other. So as honest brokers, we are always watching where the need, where the emerging need is coming from. And then there is also the governments that we have to engage with. Because have you ever done everything right, but then you're being demanded to achieve this standard and achieve this requirement and what have you, and the wicked are prospering? I mean, so there is a chance that people will just abandon this because the government has made it possible for a lot easier for you to cut down forest and grow something else. So we have to constantly even engage our own governments to make sure they put in place policies and enabling environment that will create deterrence for people to adopt the other practices, because they become the biggest threat now. So there are so many things that we can do and we will stay there, but we are not going to keep people in deprivation simply because we have to make ourselves relevant. We shall always be relevant and we shall always be on the lookout of identifying what other challenges need solutions and engage with those kinds of solutions. And we will also forever have to partner with the people at international community, because it's one world and there's a lot of space. We need each other. We need all hands on deck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for your final words. We are exactly in time because we do have to go to the next session here in the pavilion of the Netherlands Committee of IUCN in the Netherlands, here at the World Conservation Congress in Marseille. Thank you very much, everyone, Eva Evans, Dia, Roberti, and Bernabe, who participated online. It was fantastic, very clear, wonderful to hear your reflections and interventions. And thanks here to Pauline, Daryl, and Louise for the presentation, Louise, and for the discussion. Thanks the audience, of course. Do follow us. We will put the website of Momo for Climate in the YouTube chat. Thank you, everyone online, wherever you are, and have a good day or evening or morning. And I will close with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, you can hand in your headset.